Excellent. All right, so yes, my name is Matthew Dentith. I'm from the Department of Philosophy, but don't let that put you off. Some of us in the arts/humanities are also interested in what's rational to believe, given the evidence of the world around us. And I'm currently finishing off my PhD looking at the epistemology of conspiracy theories. So as an epistemologist, my concern is, given the evidence, what ought we to believe about the world? Now, a bit of history here. I grew up in Devonport over on the North Shore, which is another reason not to pity me. And in Devonport we have our own homegrown conspiracy theory. We have the conspiracy theory that the North Head Tunnel Complex, which is on one end of Devonport, which is filled with tunnels you can wander through, is said to hide a hidden second tunnel complex inside of it. And inside of this tunnel complex there is either the very first two Boeing planes ever built by the Boeing Westerveld Corporation, which are worth a small fortune, and or a whole lot of decaying ammunition that the army didn't dispose of properly. And this is said to be the two reasons as to why the tunnels are not completely accessible to the public, and why there's a government cover-up with the New Zealand Defence Forces going on at this time to stop us from getting access to the 7-level deep tunnel complex in North Head, which, depending on who you talk to, goes all the way to Mutatapu and links up to the tunnel complex underneath Albert Park as well. So it's a fairly interesting conspiracy theory with wide-ranging implications, not only for what the government's up to, but the hidden ability of Victorian engineers to be able to build massive tunnel complexes through basalt rock in the Auckland region, which is a history that no one seems to be aware of, and yet the conspiracy theorists would have us believe the Victorians are much more advanced than they actually appear to be. So that's what basically got me into conspiracy theories. Growing up in Devonport in the 80s, with all this discussion of a conspiracy theory in Devonport ongoing, I sort of became interested as to why people were ignoring the archaeological evidence which the Department of Conservation had engaged in, and also why people kept on ringing my father up saying, but surely you saw something when you were a child, since he grew up in Devonport at around about the right time. So that essentially motivated the PhD. Now this is a very short, probably 20-minute long presentation where I'll just go through some of the groundwork which I'm doing in my PhD, and hopefully this will set up the kind of questions that you'll want to ask me. So let me start off by talking through what I take a conspiracy theory to be. I take a conspiracy theory to be merely any explanation of an event that cites a conspiracy as a salient cause. And the reason why I say this is that it allows us to say that any account of the events of 9/11 is a conspiracy theory, whether you think it was an inside job committed by George W. Bush Jr., Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, and all the other ne'er-do-wells in that administration, or you think the events were due to hijackers working for Al-Qaeda. Both of these are conspiracy theories. They are an explanation of an event that cites a conspiracy, either by the American government or by this organization called Al-Qaeda, to cause a particular event, i.e. the destruction or at least damage to the Twin Towers, since presumably if you believe the Al-Qaeda hypothesis, they probably didn't actually expect the Twin Towers to be destroyed, they simply thought they would do a great affront to American imperialism by attacking homeland America. And the reason why I want to talk about conspiracy theories in this form is I want to actually get us away from the debate whereby we simply use conspiracy theory as a pejorative term to dismiss theories that we don't agree with or dislike. Because so often in literature, people have to run rings about themselves saying, oh, this is not a conspiracy theory because I think it's a warranted argument for a particular inference to an explanation. But these things are because I disagree with them. And so you end up with lots of theorists like Mark Fenster and Daniel Pipes who will say, well, I think this is true, so I have to work out why it's not a conspiracy theory, but you people who believe these things, you believe in conspiracy theories. If we simply admit conspiracy theories are a species of explanation, and we move away from treating them as being a prima facie bad case of explanation, it makes it much easier to analyze individual conspiracy theories in the wild. Because as I'm sure will come up in the discussion, there are lots of conspiracy theories which have been borne out by history as being the actual explanation of what occurred at a particular time. It also allows us to say that conspiracy theories range in plausibility. This allows me to say that there are certain North Head conspiracy theories that are more plausible than other North Head conspiracy theories. So some of the fans of Bruce Cathy have suggested that North Head is in fact a UFO locus point in the Harmonic 242 series. And I take this to be a much less plausible conspiracy theory than the claim that the government might be engaged in hiding tunnels to stop the discovery of decaying and explosive ammunition powder. So I think that's a much more plausible conspiracy theory than the UFO hypothesis. Now, conspiracy theories, of course, cite conspiracies. And all a conspiracy is a plot enacted in secret by a group of conspirators or co-conspirators who want to achieve some end. Now, part of the problem for any discussion of a conspiracy theory is that conspiracy theories posit conspiracies as an alleged cause of some event. Now, why am I saying alleged cause? Well, part of the problem here is that we can only infer an individual's desires from their behaviour. So you can, to a large extent, judge what people are thinking based upon the behaviour that they engage in. So we have some limited success psychologically in being able to judge whether someone is trustworthy or untrustworthy in regard to their behaviour in particular circumstances. And importantly, from reports. So if you look at the history of the assassination of Julius Caesar, all of the Roman historians talk about what particular individual historical actors thought or felt at the time. Now, sometimes these reports are good because you're able to actually go back to the original letters written by the co-conspirators. But often you find that these thoughts are simply well, to put it politely, the made-up machinations of particular historical authors who want to push a particular agenda. And we don't necessarily have good grounds to accept these kind of inferences. So people, when they write things down, sometimes write things in such a way to make themselves appear much better than they actually were. So, for example, the ancient Egyptians never wrote about losing any battles. So they won every battle they fought, even when they lost those battles. All the monuments dictate they won those wars abroad, even though rival civilizations concur that actually winning was not on the agenda at all. And of course, sometimes people, as I say, have said, will actually assert an intention to someone because it fits their particular agenda and the explanation they want to put forward. And importantly, for the first point, inferring from behaviour, you can, A, train yourself to behave in such a way that people are unaware of what actually is going on behind you. I have a quite significant speech defect called a hesitancy, but I'm a trained speaker, and thus I can speak in this rather flowing, eloquent way to disguise the fact that actually I should be talking like this the entire time, which would normally be my natural inclination without training. And presumably behaviourism tells us that this can actually be the case for being able to disguise intention as well. So we have a problem here. We can only allege to a certain extent the intentions of conspirators based upon their behaviour and reports of their behaviour, but we have good grounds to doubt the inferential warrant of such a move. But secondly, we're also dealing with the wants and desires of mysterious co-conspirators. And this seems like this should be a bit of a problem. Because conspiracy theories normally always posit a set of largely unknown co-conspirators who have known desires to bring about some end. So you have a large group of people whose membership is amorphous, vague. Sometimes you'll get a few cases where people say, oh, well, Al Gore is one of the principal conspirators behind the myth of anthropogenic climate change, along with his cronies X, Y, blah, 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 blah. But often what you'll say is they want this or they want that. And it's very hard to allege intentions or desires to amorphous or mysterious individuals because you can't test that attribution of intention to amorphous or mysterious individuals. And also, what counts as satisfying these rather interesting ends? Because most conspiracy theories are frustratingly vague about the endpoints. So often, what they want to do is create a new world order. Or they want to start a war on terror. Or they have decided to dumb down the population. Now, these are vague endpoints. What is a new world order? Is it global taxation? Is it a lack of global taxation? Is it complete population control? Or is it laissez-faire capitalism? Basically, no matter what you think the agenda is, it can fit into the dialectic of the shadow world government operating in the background. And it's also hard to work out what it means to actually have a war on terror. It's easy to think of there being a war on the South Island. We know what the South Island is. We can attack it with great ease. Having a war on terror is actually rather difficult. There's nothing for me to actually shoot. Presumably I need to engage in some kind of re-education program, which of course is part of the New World Order hypothesis, also some people would have. And deciding to dumb down the population, which is a bugbear for those of us engaged in teaching, given that actually education standards seem to be going up, not down. Yet the conspiracy theory says that actually we're getting much worse, rather than actually what appears to be reality, we're getting much better.